Lust doesn't just distort love, it erodes the very foundation of respect. Have you ever noticed how fleeting relationships are when lust takes the lead? It promises satisfaction but leaves behind nothing but emptiness and disdain. What starts as a fleeting desire becomes a destructive force, chipping away at the respect we owe to ourselves and others. When we indulge in lust, we lose sight of the very humanity in others. Instead of seeing the person in front of us as an individual of dignity and worth, they become an object to be used for temporary pleasure. This shift is subtle at first, but over time it corrodes the trust and admiration that are essential for any healthy relationship. Lust teaches us to take, but never to give, never to honor, cherish, or respect. But it doesn't end there. Lust doesn't just ruin how we view others. It also taints how we see ourselves. The more we give in to these urges, the more our own sense of self-respect erodes. We become slaves to fleeting desires, forgetting that true dignity comes from honoring our deepest values, not succumbing to what's temporary. So what's the solution? Can we reclaim respect in a world where lust runs rampant? The answer isn't about fighting against desire, but transforming how we approach it. It's about understanding that true satisfaction comes not from indulging in our impulses, but from living with integrity, focusing on deeper connections, and honoring both ourselves and others. Stick around and let's explore how to rebuild respect in a world that often chooses lust over love. Lust destroys respect, relationships, and self-worth. Unless you take control, discover the 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust before it destroys you. Grab your copy now in the description and start reclaiming respect. Lust begins as a fleeting thought, an impulse that seems harmless at first, but over time it grows into something much more dangerous. What starts as a momentary attraction can quickly spiral into the objectification of others. This isn't just a surface issue, it cuts deep into the very way we view and treat people. Lust doesn't just distort love, it erodes the very essence of respect for another human being. The shift is subtle, almost imperceptible, but its effects are profound and long-lasting. When we look at someone through the lens of lust, we no longer see them as a person made in the image of God, but as an object to be used for personal satisfaction. The moment we begin to objectify others, we dehumanize them. This is a crucial shift. In the beginning, we might still feel empathy or even care for them, but lust pushes those feelings aside. We start to see only their body, their physicality, their features, and forget everything else. We forget that they have thoughts, dreams, hopes, and emotions, things that make them unique and valuable in ways that go far beyond the physical. This objectification isn't just about how we see others, it's about what we do with them. When we treat people like objects, we don't truly care about them as individuals. We are no longer concerned with their well-being or the value they bring to the world. We only care about what they can give to us in the moment. This kind of transactional thinking doesn't build healthy relationships, it destroys them. When someone is treated as an object, there is no room for trust, no foundation for respect, and no chance for true intimacy. Instead, everything becomes about taking attention, affection, and satisfaction. And when we take without giving, when we fail to honor the person in front of us, we strip away their dignity and ours. But this isn't just about the other person, it's also about us. When we objectify someone, we diminish our own capacity for genuine love. The more we indulge in lust, the less we are able to truly care for another human being. Lust clouds our vision, it narrows our perspective until all we can see are superficial features, skin, shape, and appearance. We forget that love is meant to be deep, multifaceted, and sacrificial. Lust, on the other hand, is selfish. It asks, what can I get from this person, while love asks, what can I give? Lust creates false attachments promising fulfillment, but leaving us emptier than before. Imagine what happens to a relationship when one person continually objectifies the other. There is no real connection, no partnership. Instead, there is a constant pull to satisfy desires that were never truly about the other person. Over time, this leads to resentment and bitterness. It leads to brokenness because respect has been replaced with selfish need. And that brokenness isn't just external, it's internal too. The more we indulge in this kind of thinking, the harder it becomes to experience true unselfish love in any relationship. How do we move past this? The first step is acknowledging the damage lust does, not just to the person we objectified, but to ourselves as well. We need to remember that every person we encounter is more than just a body. They are a person with value and dignity, just as we are. It's a radical shift in thinking, one that requires us to stop focusing on ourselves and start considering the worth of others. The next step is self-control. It's not enough to simply recognize the problem. We must actively resist the urge to objectify. This is a fight against the natural tendencies of the flesh, but it's a fight worth having. Self-control isn't about repression. It's about restoration. It's about choosing to honor others, to respect their boundaries, and to recognize that their value isn't tied to how we perceive them physically, but to who they are as individuals. This isn't an overnight transformation. It requires consistent effort, a change in how we view others, and a commitment to personal growth. But the rewards are immense. When we stop objectifying others and start treating them with the respect they deserve, we can begin to build relationships that are healthy, authentic, and deeply fulfilling. Lust may try to deceive us, promising fleeting pleasure, but respect and love are what will truly nourish our hearts and souls. Lust, at its core, promises something fulfilling. It whispers that giving in will bring pleasure, satisfaction, and connection. But what it delivers is often the exact opposite: disconnection, betrayal, and an eventual breakdown of trust. Lust doesn't just affect the momentary thrill. It undermines the very foundation that relationships are built on. At first, it may seem harmless, a glance, a thought, a fleeting desire. But over time, lust slowly shifts the dynamics between two people. What once was a bond of mutual respect and understanding becomes a transaction of self-interest. Lust doesn't care about the well-being of the other person. It reduces them to an object to be used, not valued. When this shift happens, it begins to eat away at the relationship, often in ways that are subtle but incredibly destructive. The moment one person begins to treat the other as a knot of desire, they've already taken the first step toward disrespect. Relationships thrive on connection, and connection requires mutual respect. Without respect, there can be no true intimacy. And without intimacy, the relationship becomes shallow, hollow, and unsustainable. Lust thrives in the absence of genuine emotional closeness, replacing true connection with a mere performance of affection. This is when love gets confused with desire, and commitment is overshadowed by a need for self-gratification. As lust takes root, trust, the very cornerstone of any meaningful relationship, begins to erode. Trust is not something that can be rebuilt easily once broken, especially when the underlying cause of the betrayal is sexual in nature. When lust drives actions, lies often follow, secrets are kept, boundaries are crossed, and a toxic cycle begins. The once solid foundation of a relationship now rests on shaky ground. Each moment of indulgence in lust reinforces the lies, further distancing the two people from one another. But the real tragedy of lust is not just in its immediate effects. It's the long-term damage it does to emotional connection. Lust's impact doesn't fade after the moment ends. It leaves behind scars that can last long after the physical satisfaction has faded. When one person is consumed by lust, the other is often left feeling alone, unimportant, or even betrayed. They begin to question their own worth, asking themselves why they aren't enough. This self-doubt grows, festering in the background, slowly breaking down the emotional bond that once held the relationship together. What was once a genuine partnership is now a relationship defined by insecurity, suspicion, and the more lust is indulged, the more both partners begin to withdraw, building walls between them. Conversations become strained, touch becomes distant, and even simple moments of togetherness lose their meaning. The relationship, once full of warmth and connection, becomes a cold and unrecognizable shell of what it used to be. Over time, this pattern becomes self-reinforcing. The more one person gives in to lust, the more the relationship is pushed into isolation. Lust feeds on the insecurity it creates, turning the relationship into a constant battle for attention, affection, and validation. What once was a partnership of shared experiences now becomes a series of individual pursuits, each partner looking to fill the emptiness that lust has created. Eventually, this cycle can lead to the ultimate collapse of the relationship. Trust is so fractured that even the smallest conflict becomes a trigger for resentment. Lust, once a seemingly innocent indulgence, has now turned into a full-blown destructive force. What was once a deep emotional connection has been replaced by emptiness and bitterness. The damage is not just emotional. It can be spiritual as well. Lust pulls people away from their true purpose in relationships, causing them to lose sight of the deeper meaning of love and commitment. It distorts the view of intimacy and connection, replacing it with a selfish pursuit of instant gratification. Relationships built on such foundations cannot endure. They collapse under the weight of their own superficiality. The real question is, can relationships be saved once lust has taken root? The answer is yes, but it requires intentional effort, self-reflection, and often a commitment to change. Rebuilding trust, restoring respect, and healing emotional wounds are not easy tasks, but it is possible when both people are willing to face the truth, acknowledge the damage, and work together to rebuild what has been broken. Only then can a relationship move past the consequences of lust and reclaim the respect, intimacy, and connection it was always meant to have. Purity isn't just about avoiding sin. It's about honoring the sacred nature of our bodies and our relationships. Have you ever wondered why purity is so deeply emphasized in Scripture? It's not just a moral guideline, it's the foundation for a life of respect and integrity. When we talk about purity, we're talking about more than just sexual conduct. We're talking about the whole of our lives being aligned with God's design. To live a life of purity is to live a life that recognizes and affirms the value of every human being, starting with us. In 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, Paul writes, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own, you were bought at a price. Therefore honor God with your body." Our bodies are not simply vessels for personal desires or indulgence. They are sacred, created to reflect God's glory. This truth changes everything. When we grasp the weight of this, we begin to view every action, every relationship, and every thought as an opportunity to honor God and respect others. Purity becomes a way of showing reverence for both the divine presence within us and the divine worth in others. But respect doesn't stop at our own bodies. It extends to how we treat others, particularly in the realm of relationships. Scripture constantly calls us to love your neighbor as yourself, Matthew 22:39, which means that if we are to truly respect others, we must honor their dignity and humanity. Lust, on the other hand, dehumanizes. It reduces people to objects, stripping away their inherent value. When we engage in lust, we aren't recognizing the sacredness of another person's body. We're exploiting it for our own selfish desires. This breaks the commandment to love others as ourselves, turning respect into mere convenience, not commitment. Purity and respect are also tied together through the concept of self-control. Galatians 5:22-23 tells us that self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, a sign of maturity and spiritual growth. When we fail to exercise self-control, we give way to our impulses and desires, allowing them to dictate our actions rather than submitting to the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Without self-control, respect for ourselves and others crumbles. Purity in this sense becomes a guardrail, protecting our hearts from being overtaken by fleeting desires that lead to regret. It's about learning to say no to temporary satisfaction in order to say yes to lasting peace and true respect for the boundaries God has set for us. In relationships, this respect is paramount. A relationship built on purity isn't just about avoiding sin, it's about creating an environment where both individuals can grow together in holiness and mutual respect. This doesn't mean perfection, but it does mean striving toward God's best for each other. It's easy to let the world's standards of love, affection, and desire cloud our vision, but God's blueprint for relationships is radically different. Ephesians 5:25-28 speaks to the sacrificial love that should mark a marriage, where the husband loves the wife as Christ loves the church, with respect, dignity, and selflessness. This love, rooted in purity, isn't driven by lust or control. It's driven by genuine care for the other person's well-being. Purity also extends to our thought life. Jesus made it clear that sin isn't only about actions. It begins in the heart and mind. In Matthew 5:28, he says, "But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Lust doesn't just manifest in physical actions. It starts in our thoughts. What we entertain in our minds affects how we treat others, and ultimately how we respect ourselves. Purity of mind guards us against the temptation to objectify others or fall into patterns of thought that diminish their value. It's a call to filter our thoughts through God's truth, seeing others through His eyes. Living according to biblical principles of purity and respect means rejecting the world's casual approach to relationships and instead embracing a higher calling. It's about understanding that our actions, our thoughts, and our attitudes have weight. They have consequences not just for us, but for those around us. When we live in purity, we honor God, we honor ourselves, and we honor others. This is the path to true respect, a respect that transcends fleeting desires and endures for a lifetime. It's a life lived with intention, integrity, and a deep reverence for God's design in every part of our being. Ready to break free from the grip of lust? Discover 7 biblical secrets to destroy lust and reclaim your purity today. Get your copy now through the link in the description and pinned comment. Transform your life. Desires. Everyone has them. From the moment we wake up to the moment we sleep, our lives are shaped by them. But here's the crucial question. What happens when those desires get out of control? When they begin to dominate us, warp our judgment, and distort our purpose? That's where real danger lies. The battle we face isn't simply about resisting temptation. It's about the deeper issue of how our desires shape who we are, how we relate to others, and ultimately how we stand before God. Desires in themselves aren't the problem. In fact, they're a part of the divine design. Our desires point us toward what is good, love, joy, satisfaction, beauty. But when they are disordered, when they go unchecked, they begin to twist and corrupt, turning something intended for good into a force of destruction. What begins as a natural, God-given longing for connection or fulfillment quickly becomes an idol that consumes us, leaving us with nothing but emptiness. This is where we begin to see the fundamental danger of unrestrained desires. Left unchecked, they don't simply make us lose control for a moment. They begin to distort our very identities. We stop seeing the world around us as it truly is, and instead we view it through the lens of our unchecked desires. People become objects, things to be used for our gratification, rather than individuals to be loved and respected. Our relationships, our work, even our understanding of God, are all influenced by these twisted desires. What was once a healthy craving becomes an insatiable need, something that we sacrifice our dignity and respect for. At the core of this struggle is the loss of self-control. As desires spiral out of control, they pull us further away from our true purpose and identity. We are not meant to be slaves to our impulses. We are meant to be free. Yet as our desires become the driving force behind our decisions, we become enslaved to them. The very things we thought would bring us satisfaction end up bringing nothing but dissatisfaction. Each time we yield to these desires, we lose a piece of ourselves, and with it the ability to truly respect and love others. But the true danger of disordered desires isn't simply in how they affect our relationships with others. The real destruction happens when we lose sight of our relationship with God. We were created in His image, and in Him we find our true worth and purpose. When desires take center stage, they blur that vision, making us forget who we were created to be. Instead of living for His glory, we live for the fleeting satisfaction of our impulses. We forget that true fulfillment doesn't come from satisfying every desire, but from aligning our desires with God's will for us. The road to freedom isn't through the suppression of desire itself, but through the proper ordering of those desires. True freedom comes not when we give in to every urge, but when we learn to discipline our desires and allow them to align with what is pure, good, and holy. This isn't about stifling our humanity. It's about restoring it. By choosing to prioritize God's design for our lives, we transform our desires from being selfish and destructive to being aligned with love, compassion, and true fulfillment. In a world that constantly tells us to give in, to indulge, to satisfy every craving, this is a radical idea. Yet it is in the surrender of our desires to God's will that we find freedom, we find peace, we find the ability to respect not only ourselves but also the people around us. Disordered desires promise freedom but only lead to bondage. True freedom comes from the discipline of aligning ourselves with something greater than our fleeting impulses. The solution isn't to fight desire head-on but to redirect it, to put it in its rightful place. And when that happens, desires become what they were always meant to be, guides toward a deeper, more fulfilling relationship with God, others, and ourselves. It's about restoring order and aligning with the truth that real satisfaction isn't found in fulfilling every whim, but in living according to the purpose we were created for. When we do that, everything changes. Respect isn't something you can demand or force. It's something that's earned, nurtured, and sustained. The moment we let our desires control us, we start losing respect, not just for others, but for ourselves. The chaos we create when we indulge in lust comes with a heavy price. It chips away at the integrity of our relationships, distorts our self-image, and shatters the very foundation of trust. But here's the truth. We can restore respect, and it all begins with transformation. To restore respect, we first need to transform our perception of ourselves. You see, when we allow lust to take root in our lives, we begin to lose sight of our true worth. We reduce ourselves to something lesser, something disposable. But respect starts with recognizing the value within us. When we realize that we are made with purpose, we begin to live accordingly. It's a shift in mindset, understanding that you deserve better than momentary pleasure at the expense of your dignity. The next step is to stop looking at others as objects of desire and instead see them as people with worth. Lust thrives on objectification. It encourages us to see others as means to an end, as something to be consumed for our own pleasure. But when we choose to view others through a lens of respect and empathy, everything changes. Our relationships become deeper, more meaningful, and more rooted in love. The transformation happens when we refuse to allow others to be reduced to their physical attributes. We begin to see their hearts, their struggles, their stories. This shift, while subtle, is powerful. It leads to an environment where respect isn't earned through what someone offers us, but through recognizing their intrinsic value. Restoring respect also means confronting the habits and choices that have brought us to this point. Lust is a cycle, a repeating pattern that doesn't end until we make the conscious decision to break free. This process of transformation demands honesty. We must acknowledge our temptations and flaws without excuses, without blaming others or circumstance. This honesty is not about self-condemnation. It's about freedom. When we own our mistakes and take responsibility for our actions, we can begin to take the necessary steps to change. The moment we stop making excuses is the moment we start rebuilding the respect we lost. But there's more to this transformation. It's not just about breaking free from lust. It's about building something stronger in its place. Once we identify the roots of our struggles and begin to walk a new path, we need to replace old patterns with new ones. This means cultivating habits of purity, self-control, and love. It means choosing respect daily, even when temptation is strong. True transformation happens not just in moments of clarity, but in consistent choices over time. As we develop new habits, our respect for ourselves and others grows stronger. The key to restoring respect through transformation is understanding that it's a process, not a one-time event. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every day, every decision to honor ourselves and others brings us closer to the life we desire, one filled with real respect, real love, and real dignity. The transformation begins in our hearts and minds, but it will eventually show up in our actions and relationships. It's a journey worth taking, and it starts with the simple choice to honor our true selves and others as we were meant to. So if you find yourself stuck in the cycle of lust, remember this: you are not defined by your mistake. You have the power to transform, to reclaim the respect you've lost, and to live a life of integrity. The path to restoration begins with one step: choosing respect, choosing love, and choosing a new way of seeing yourself and others. It may not be easy, but it will always be worth it. The battle against lust isn't just a fight for purity, it's a fight for respect. The way we see ourselves, others, and the world around us is forever shaped by the choices we make. Lust may seem harmless at first, a temporary distraction, but it slowly erodes our dignity and the respect we deserve. It distances us from the truth of who we are and distorts the relationships we value most. But here's the good news: the power to restore respect lies within you. Transformation doesn't happen in a single moment, but through each choice you make. The journey towards healing and respect starts with acknowledging your worth, recognizing the value of others, and committing to live with integrity. This isn't about perfect performance. It's about progress. It's about making intentional choices day by day that rebuild the foundation of respect in your life. And the most powerful tool to help you along this path is understanding the deeper biblical truths that offer not just a way out, but a way to live victoriously over lust and temptation. If you're ready to take control, to break free from the cycle of lust and rebuild your life with respect, I've put together something that will guide you step by step. My ebook, 7 Biblical Secrets to Destroy Lust Before It Destroys You, contains practical biblical wisdom to help you defeat lust and reclaim the respect you deserve. These secrets are rooted in timeless principles that have the power to transform your life, giving you the strength to resist temptation and walk in freedom. Don't let lust control your life any longer. Take the first step toward restoration. You can find the link to grab your copy of the ebook in the description below. Let's walk this journey together, because you deserve a life filled with respect, dignity, and freedom.